Well, hello again, everybody. This is going to be kind of a companion video to the last one that I put on about this car. I wanted to make a video about my little LS project on my 1984 Corvette. If you watched my last video, you knew this car was already LS swapped. I already have a 4L80E in it, a Dana 44, and all that fun stuff. The motor that was in it is on that engine stand right there. That's a cammed LS6. This is a 6-liter. This is an LQ9 block. LQ9 block and rotating assembly that I pulled out of a 2004 Escalade. I put new bearings in it. I put new piston rings in it, new seals and all that. Just rehoned the factory bore, reused the pistons. It had the heavy-duty connecting rods and floating wrist pins in it. I put on a set of 799 heads that I pulled off of a, I don't know, some shitbox 5.3, I don't know, probably like a 06 or 07, I'm not sure. Anyway, I pulled a set of 799 heads, which basically turns this into an iron-blocked LS2, so the 10.9 to 1 compression and all that. I ported the heads myself. If you followed along at all on the build thread I had on the Corvette forum, I had pictures and documented all that. And the cam that's in this is a Summit Stage 2, just basic off-the-shelf cam. I put in LS7 lifters and factory push rods. Really, the big money spent on this is that intake, the Fast LSXR 102 millimeter. And to be honest with you, I already had that. That is an LS6 intake. So it's not like I gained some massive amount of power with that. I'm sure 10, 15 horsepower, whatever it is. But the big reason I did it is that guy right there. That is a Boss that's cast into these for direct port nitrous. So this is a nitrous motor. The rings that are in it are Hastings steel top ring, gapped for nitrous. Holley Terminator X for the computer system. I'm going to be running a Progressive 200 shot on it. And again, this is just a street car. I'd play around at flashlight drags and things, but that's about it. A couple unique things about this that aren't typical of a normal LS swap, at least not a budget one anyway, is for one, there's no turbo, but that's an LS3 water pump. I had to buy a water pump anyway because the water pump on my LS6 was squealing really bad. It had a bad bearing in it. And I looked on Rock Auto, and it really wasn't much of a difference in price. But the interesting thing about the LS3 water pump is the top radiator hose is here for the most part on the driver's side. It's not all the way under the air pipe. And you can even feel this engine's hot right now. It's been running for a while. This air tube is completely cold. It's about 50 degrees in my garage here right now. And I can touch right here on the underside of this silicone elbow, and it's cold being this close to a hot heater line or a hot coolant hose. So it hopefully will keep a lot of temperature away from the air inlet charge. Griffin Racing universal fit radiator. The lower radiator hose, I went to the parts store and I found one that fit, and I think it was like a 2010 Dodge Ram or something like that. It was the hose I used on the bottom, and it fit just absolutely perfectly. A couple other things that are unique. This is going to be a flex fuel car. I have the flex fuel sensor mounted right there on the cross brace, and there is my Aeromotive fuel pressure regulator with the sending unit on it. So the Holley does know the fuel pressure digitally. I'm having a problem. Oh, before I get to the problem, I want to talk about exhaust. Those beautiful headers that just had their first heat cycle on them, so they have that like awesome gold kind of finish to them. Those are cheap eBay stainless steel headers meant for a C5 Corvette. If you go on the Corvette forum and search, you can find some awesome walkthroughs that people have done in the past on using these. Basically, on this side, it's easy. You do have to chop the collector off and weld a 45-degree piece on. It's really not that bad if you can weld stainless. I actually converted that little welder there to be able to run Blue Devil flux core stainless, and it worked pretty well. It's a little lumpy, but it's sealed, and you can hear it in the exhaust. It's not ticking. You can't hear any exhaust leak or anything. So this side, you just have to weld. Also, I use my wideband O2 sensor on this side. The Holley only uses one O2 sensor, and I'm using it on this side. So the factory bungs in these headers are way too close to the merge point in the collector for the Holley. For a wideband O2, you want 6 to 8 inches away from that merge point. And these headers, the bung was just a ½ inch away from it. It was right on top of it almost. So I plugged that off, and then I welded another bung 7 or so inches back the pipe, just so that way the wideband would get a better reading of that entire bank instead of just one cylinder or so. On this side, it was a little trickier to get the exhaust to fit. And you can see on cylinder 4, if you look down there, how bad I had to bash in that tube on that collector, or on that primary tube, to get it to clear the frame. Luckily for me, the engine rocks this way. So the engine literally rocks, and it pulls the exhaust away from that frame. So as long as you get it beat in enough to clear the frame, you're good. There's no issue. I will fire this thing up for you so you can hear it, but I can't run it very long. And the reason is actually over here. I'm having an issue with belts. My belt is slipping off horribly. And the reason is this mount that I use for my alternator is actually from the now out of business Street and Performance. And I like the mount well enough. It's meant for these old GM style CS130 alternators. So this would be like an alternator off of a V6 Cavalier from the early 90s, I think. And it works well enough for anything I need it for. It's perfectly fine. But when I went with the LS3 water pump, I had to put shims in to shim out the belt spacing. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see those. Yeah, you can see the shim right. Well, yeah, I guess you can kind of see it there. See where the water pump, and then you can see a gasket, and then there's there's like an aluminum spacer there. That spaced the water pump out for belt spacing, which is fine. The problem with that, if you look down here, I have some washers stuffed in there with an aluminum sleeve. That's because that's the spacer I needed on the on the alternator. So I had to cut it shorter to be able to use that with an LS3 water pump to make sure everything lined up. And I just used washers to shim it out to where I thought it looked good. Well, I was wrong. I got it shimmed out too far. So now it's pushing my belt off. It's pushing the belt that way. So it's an easy fix. I got to take the belt off, take the alternator off, and I'm going to take 2 of those washers out. And hopefully that will straighten it out. While I have when I take the air filter and that tube and everything off, I might put a straight edge, which I should have done when it was on the engine stand, but I just forgot. I'm going to put a straight edge on it and see how bad it is. But I think, anyway, the problem is in that alternator mount. So what I'll do is I'll start this up, let it run a little bit, and it only takes a minute or 2 for that belt to try to slip off. And I'll show you what it looks like, and maybe you guys can comment what you think it is, if I'm right or not. But like I said, I'm really thinking it is that alternator belt, or that alternator position. Now, I've shoved the belt back on. It's lined up now just fine, so I should be able to start it. It's not going to run great because you'll notice I do not have an IAC. My IAC is blocked off. I do not have an idle-air control valve. The reason for that, I have had a hell of a time getting the Holley Terminator X to actually control an IAC stepper motor properly. Other people have had the same issue, but what I can do is get a throttle body with an adjustable blade like this one, and I can set the idle with timing in the software, and it actually works really well. I ran all last summer without an IAC, and I'll be honest with you, the only issue it gave me is on cold startup. Once the motor warmed up, it ran beautifully without one. It didn't stall at stop signs or anything. The Holley really does a good job of compensating with timing to keep an engine running. Also, I have spark plugs in this motor that are 2 steps colder than stock because this is going to be a nitrous motor once I get the tune and everything figured out, and once I get all these bugs worked out of it. So I'm sure that has or I've heard some people say that can have an effect on idle. So it's going to be a little rough sounding starting up here, but I know a lot of you were following along on the build thread and would love to hear this thing run. So here we go. Here's my Holly touchscreen. So let's see where we're at. Yeah, see, as soon as I take my foot off of it, she dies. Can't really see that. That's over 50 pounds of oil pressure. Whoa. Oh, that was just tools falling off my lift. All right. Okay, so let me see if I can take my foot off of it now. You can see the RPM there. We can take a look at that belt. Yeah, see? So just in that short time, that noise you heard, you can see the car sitting on a lift right here, and I've got junk everywhere. That was something either falling off the lift or something falling off here. I do see some liquid down here. Oh, that's oil from whenever I primed the oil pump. Never mind, that's nothing leaking. So you can see here what happened to that belt. It pushed it out right on the power steering pump. You can see, well, I guess you can't see because you don't have a light down in there, huh? Let me grab the light. Just in that short time, you can see down on the crank, it's pushed all the way forward too. And it's pretty far forward on that water pump. So it keeps wanting to slide forward, and it looks fine on that alternator. But like I said, I think what's happening is that alternator is sitting too far forward. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think I'm full of crap. But that's the only thing I can think of, because the only thing that was changed was the water pump was added, but I used ICT billet spacers that are designed for this particular belt spacing specifically. They're nothing cobbled together by me or anything. What is cobbled together by me is that alternator bracket. I ground those spacers shorter to space it in to match up with that water pump, and then I shimmed it back out with washers, and I just eyeballed it. So I'm pretty sure I probably screwed that up. I'm willing to bet I messed that up instead of ICT billet making a part wrong. But that's it, guys. It's been an adventure building this thing. It sounds amazing. I know on video it probably sounds like hot garbage, but hey, whatever. It's not your ride, it's mine, right? But it sounds good. There's no clangs and bangs. It has great oil pressure. I'm going to get the belt fixed probably tomorrow, and then I'm going to start working on getting some idle tuning so it'll sit and idle a lot better. I haven't had a chance to get a good heat cycle on it because I know it's going to throw that belt. And I would rather, you know what, let it sit. It's fine. Start at it tomorrow fresh. And I'm going to get the belt fixed, so it stays on there. And then I'll try to get a couple heat cycles on it. It's still, wet and cold and rainy here in Pennsylvania. I mean, it is just March 5th today, so it's not exactly Corvette season yet. But it's awesome that I got it going at this point now. To be honest, with this motor, the 4L80E and the Dana 44 that's in it, mechanically, there's not a whole lot more that I really want to do as far as a street car. It is going to get, I think next winter, I'm going to focus on cosmetics. We're going to paint it. And I mean, I already painted it once, but I'm going to do something different, I think. I'm going to probably have the wheels and stuff re-chromed. But that's it, guys. Thank you so much for everybody's advice and help. This would not exist. I would not have been able to build this if it wouldn't have been for the awesome people at the Corvette Forum. Every piece of this, and I've owned this car since 1998. I was 18 years old when I bought this car, and I'm 42 now. And I have been on the Corvette forum for the vast majority of that time, asking obnoxious questions and probably pissing people off. But hey, what are you going to do? You got to learn somehow, right? But thanks again, guys. And if you have any questions or anything, hit me up. All right, thanks.